Hello, and welcome back to Prospecting on Purpose. My name is Sara Murray, and today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite topics. And the reason this area is my favorite is because this thing we're going to be discussing is one of the biggest tools and most powerful tools that you have in your toolbox when it comes to business. And it's an area that we don't always spend a lot of time on, so that's why we're doing an episode about it. We're going to talk about why understanding our core values is going to give us leverage when it comes to our business actions. And I know when I do this in my workshop, sometimes usually the men are a little bit more grumbly and skeptical about why are we spending time talking about our values. But by the end of the day, the end of the workshop, this ends up being one of their favorite exercises because it is something that helps us increase our confidence, show up more authentically, and really be thoughtful and intentional about how we connect with others in a business environment. When people think of values and principles, oftentimes they relate it to an organization or a company. What is the company's values? It might be a web page, it might be something up on the office, a signage on the office. I think this is fantastic when businesses do this. And in my experience, a lot of them actually do work in alignment with their values and use it in the right way. If you don't know your organization's values or principles, I encourage you to look it up. And if you don't have values or principles, I encourage you to create some for your business. But what I find to be an interesting differentiator for success, and this is what I teach in my workshops, every single person is their own individual business unit. So the way they spend their time, the way you spend your money, the way you spend your actions, all of that is really business decisions, usually in alignment with the larger organization's goals. But if we can start looking at ourselves as our own individual business unit, that's going to help us just really differentiate ourselves from other people and give us a competitive edge. So when we think about starting with our core values, one caveat I want to make is that we're allowed to have values that are different in different areas of our lives. So the way that you show up as a spouse or a parent or a daughter or a sibling, that might look very different than how you show up at work. You might really value loyalty in your relationship, but loyalty might not be a core value at work. And so today, when we're going to talk about this, I want you to view everything we're talking about through the lens of a business lens, work lens. And there are 5 really specific business reasons why understanding your values is going to help you get ahead and why this matters. The first is it clarifies your priorities, which also helps you clarify where you spend your time. The second, and probably one of the most important, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail, is understanding our values basically gives us a framework for our decision making. If we are making decisions that are out of alignment with our values, that becomes a clear line in the sand for us to say, oh, this actually isn't the right action I should be taking. So it's really important to have that tool because that's going to help us make decisions, but also be a lot more confident in the decisions that we make because they're in alignment with our values. The next thing from a business standpoint, it helps you build trust and integrity in relationships because you're showing up representing your values and other people feel that and see that. It's also going to help you recognize other people's values, which leads to the 4th reason why this is important. This understanding our values helps us create quick connection points with other people, which is really key in any business environment, especially sales. We want to find connection points. We want to build relationships because that's how we sell things. That's how we influence others to want to work with us. People work with who they know, like, and trust. If we know ourselves, we like ourselves, we trust ourselves, that's going to come through. And the way we do this is spending some time understanding ourselves. And then the 5th piece to this is it really helps shape your personal brand. And in 2026, in the world of AI and digital noise and just all the messiness that's out there, having a personal brand is actually a strategic professional advantage. And so core values are an element to your personal brand. So those are the 5 reasons. Clarify priorities, serves as a framework for decision making, build trust and integrity, quickly create connection points, and then shape your personal brand. So I'm going to go through a list of values, not a huge list. I'll probably read about 12. But what I want you to think through is I want you to understand which ones are resonating with you more. So if you hear one, you think, yes, that's me. If you hear one, you think, nope, I don't care about fame. I don't care about power. Great. Process of elimination. That's not one of your core values. And so that's one piece. Figure out what's resonating with you. The second thing is that I want you to think about, like, with your personal brand, one definition I use for that is, what do people say about you when you're not in the room? And so when I think about my own personal values at work, I'll share mine: professional, fun, creative, approachable, and intentional. Those are my 5 core values at work. And a lot of times people will say, wow, you're so intentional. You're really intentional with your action. You're intentional with your business. That's one of the biggest compliments that someone could pay me, because it means my values are showing up at work. And so I'm going to read this list to you. Again, think what resonates with you and think about what you want people to say about you when you're not in the room. And just to also caveat, there are hundreds and hundreds of values. There is a website. I found a great list called scienceofpeople.com/core-values if you want to spend some time looking at this longer. But I'm just going to read off a few and see which ones stand out more. Honest, creative, loyal, ethical, integrity, trust, compassion, courage, passion, creativity, leadership, adaptability, transparency, dependable, innovative. Okay, how did that feel? Did anything stand out? One of the things that I want to talk a little bit more about is this concept of using our values for decision making. So I'll share a quick example. Year 1.5 in my business, I had a client I was working with, and I didn't love working with them. And there was nothing bad about them or their organization, but some of the stuff that they did just made me feel a little icky. It just didn't sit right. And our contract was up, and they wanted to renew and keep working together. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to. So I did what everyone does when they need to make a hard decision, and I made a pros and cons list. And at one point, writing the cons, I just wrote, they're not in alignment with my values. And as soon as I realized that, as soon as I put pen to paper and saw that, it was like the clearest no ever. And so we did not renew the contract. And I felt really good about it because I use that as a framework for decision making. I see organizations use this a lot too. If they can empower their people to really understand the values of the business and then act within those values for the business, any action they take, they're going to be backed up by the company because they were acting with the company core values. It's the same for us. So it serves as a great decision-making tool. I use my values all the time as a gut check to see if it's a yes or a no, or which path I should take. And I'll give one more example. Let's say you have a job opportunity for a new job, and you're not sure if you want it. You're not unhappy with your current employer, but you had a headhunter and you interviewed anyway, but you got an offer. Now you have 2 choices to make. Do you stay at your current employer, or do you take the new job? One thing you could do is look at both companies' principles, both companies' values, and compare them to yours. Which ones feel more in sync and which one doesn't? And that just is another data point for you in decision making. The other piece that I really, really like about understanding our values is the ability to build connections with others. So let's say I prioritize fun or creativity, and I meet somebody else who also prioritizes fun and creativity. Our working relationship is going to be super easy because we already have something in common. We already have that foundation laid. But what happens when you don't have shared values with someone else? What happens if you're meeting with someone and they don't value what you value? When we are in a position where we're selling something or we're influencing others, one way that we can use this tool is we can look at, what does that person stand for? How are they showing up with their words and actions? So I'll share another example. Early on in my business, I had a meeting with a company I was trying to sell a sales training to, and one of the men in the meeting was very pointed and direct in his questioning. And I was a new business, so I didn't have a ton of social proof outside of just my own success and some anecdotal success. But he was just being very, very direct, but respectful. So even though he was hitting me with objections, I like objections, so I wasn't afraid of it, but he was just kind of coming at me. But it was kind and respectful and professional, just very direct. So I also value professionalism, and I mirrored back and answered his questions, and I answered them respectfully and honestly and direct, because it was very, very obvious to me that he valued respect and directness. And what was kind of funny is at the end of the meeting, he said, well, thank you so much for letting me ask you all my questions. I hope you found me respectful. And it was so funny because I did, and I figured it out before he told me. And most of the time, people aren't going to tell you, but you can use context clues, right? And it's funny because once you start to use these out in the world, you're going to find that they show up all the time. And so as an action item today, I want you to sit with your core values, visit a website, ask AI for a list of values, and pick the top 5 that resonate with you the most at work, and stick them on a Post-it note and stick them near your computer and see how often that shows up during your day. You will be shocked at how much you can use it. So just to recap, our 5 business reasons serves as a clarification on your priorities. It's a framework for decision making. It builds trust and integrity in relationships. It quickly builds connection points with others, and it helps shape your personal brand. I think one of the things that's most powerful about this is it really helps us show up with confidence. Because when we think about confidence, I like to marry confidence with authenticity, because if we have self-worth and we have self-awareness, we have self-love, that's going to show up as authentic, which helps us show up as confident. But if we don't take the time to build relationships with ourselves and reflect on ourselves, then we miss that opportunity to have that confident advantage. So I really hope you got value out of today's episode. It is a really interesting area to sit with and think about. So I hope you take the time to sit with it. And if you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review, subscribe, share, all the things. Thanks so much for joining, and I'll see you next week.